Hello, so today we are going to do this problem, which is part of Days of Leetcode JavaScript Challenge. Today is day 18. So the problem is convert object to JSON string. So we have an object and we want to return a valid JSON string of that object, okay? And so this object will include strings, integers, arrays, and objects, and booleans and null. So these are basically the data types that we should expect. And the returned string should not include any extra space. And the order of keys as well should be the same as the order returned by these objects, by this function object.keys. So if we have, let's say this here, we should return first y and then x, okay? And we want to solve it without using the built-in JSON.stringify, because if we can use this, then we'll just pass it the object and we'll get the desired output, okay? So let's solve it. Okay, so first let's think about what are the different types we need to handle. So the problem already says that it includes string, objects, and nulls. Okay, so we can just rely on this, right? Now, which ones need special treatment, right? Integers and arrays, integers and booleans should be fine, because let's just play with this a little bit. So let's say let's just print a string of just an integer and see what we get. Let's print it as 1 first, right? Just the value 1. The cases would be false, but this is just so we can see the output. So we just get output of 1. So it should be good. Now for true, we get true. But let's actually just have a case here that has like true, just true, okay? Or let's leave this case as it is and have another case here, call it true, and then another case here, call it just 1. Okay, and so for our first case, let's see what happens. So this one, you can see matches, and then for 1, for this case here, it does match as well. Now, just to generalize this a little bit, let's see if we put it in a string, if that still works. And it does, right? And if we do the same thing for true, it does as well. Okay? And so we already know that for integers and for booleans, so let's call these handled, and booleans, it works. Okay? So we can just pass this object here and it should work. Okay, now what do we need to handle? We need to handle strings. So let's see if a string works here. So let's add a string. Let's call it just maybe A, B, something like that. Okay, so you can see our string doesn't work because here we get A, B, but we expect this. So we need special handling for strings. And so how do we know if value is a string? Well, we just check its type. So we just check the type of the object, and if it's equal to string, then in JavaScript you need 3 of these, and then what we need to do is we want to explicitly have these double quotes. And so to do that, we'll just have it like this, and then string interpolation, have the value object, but we need backtick for this to work, for this string interpolation to work here. To be able to put the variable here, you need backticks. And then we explicitly add these double quotes. So let's see now. And it does work. Okay, so now we handle strings. We need to handle arrays. So let's see first if arrays just even works out of the box. So do we have an array here? We don't, so let's just add 1. So let's say it has 1, 2, 3, 4. See what happens here. And you can see we didn't add the brackets here. Okay, so that's the first problem. Now another problem I want to show you here is, what if it's an array that has another object inside it? So let's see, let's actually change this one here, and let's have this be 2, and let's have this be an array, and let's have maybe 2, and then let's have true, an array. This is a valid array, so let's see if our problem can solve it with just that. And you can see it doesn't, because for the map it just puts objects, right? And so we need to handle the object inside an array. And so for that, we can just recursively call JSON stringify again, basically, so that it handles the recursion call. Okay, so that it handles the objects inside the array. Okay, and so how do we check first if it's an array so that we can call on the elements? Well, we can just take the object and check if it's an array. So that's array dot is array object, and we want to check. We want to go through all the elements. So let's call them values. So let's have a constant values here, and let's have the object to map. And so we get the element here. And what we want to do with that element, we want to call stringify again so that we handle it, so that we recursively stringify that element. And so we want to call JSON stringify again on that element. And this would be the values, but we also need to add these two brackets ourselves. So how do we do that? Well, we can just use the same backtick formula we used here, which is just return. And now we want to add the values. But do we want to just add the values as a list? No, we want to add them with these commas. And so how do we do that? Well, we can just join with comma. So that would be like this. Okay, and we're going to close our, this would be, needs to be inside our entire variable. Okay, and so this should work. However, we also, you can see here that we may have a map, or sorry, not a map, but we may have an object with key and values, and so we need to handle that as well. And so how do we check if something is a key and value? We need to check, we can just check the type of the object and see if it's an object. Now, I agree the naming here is off a little bit because it's called object and we are checking the objects here, but the object can be an integer in Boolean, but if we check if the type is object, it's actually something like this, or an array. And so to avoid this swallowing the array check, we want to put it after the array check. So we want to put it like this. Okay. And now what do we want to do here? So we want to check the type of is object. If it is an object, we want to parse the keys. Okay. So here, let's just put that we already handled arrays, and now we already also handled booleans. We need to handle we are handling objects now. Okay, so what do we need? We need the keys first. And so how do we get the keys? We can just use object.keys, and then pass it. And for each key value, we want to put the key as it is because we know the key is a string, but the value can be an object. We could have something like this where the key is A, but the value is maybe like another array, right? Something like this. This is totally possible. And so we want to recurse on this so that we stringify it. And so the same way we did with array here. So how do we do that? Well, we can just do the same mapping we did here. And so to do that, we just get the keys and map. And then to map here, we'll get the key. And then we want to call JSON stringify again, but on what element? On the value. And so how do we get the value? We just take the object and get the value at key. Okay. But once we get these values, we want to convert them to the string that has the key to the value. And so how do we do that? Well, backtick again with the key, right? And then 2 commas like this, and then this also needs to be in a variable like this. And then once we do that, we have the backtick here as well. This should work. This would be the pairs we are looking for. And then we want to return. These pairs here, after getting the stringify, are good. The only thing missing is to add these parentheses like this here. Okay, these brackets like this. And so we want to just add these brackets and then put the pairs inside. But the pairs also need to be joined with comma. And so similarly to the array here. And so we want to take the pairs and just, so this needs to be, we want to join them with comma. Okay. And this should work. Now, let's see if it works. So it looks like we have a problem with Okay, so why do we have this problem? We have this problem because of nil gets nil. The type of object for nil is actually nil, and so this is actually object, and so this this here gets passed nil, which doesn't work. And so we need to check nil here first. So we want to check for object is equal to nil. So if that's the case, we just want to return nil as is, like this, like for this here. So we want to just return nil, and that would be that we handled nil here. Okay, so let's see, and you can see now we don't have the error anymore. Now if we look at this object here, looks almost like the other one, except for the keys, like this string here, we need to have double quotes, so we need to fix that here. So let's put double quotes, and then now it should be good. Now all of them pass because we also handled objects. Okay, and now we should be good. So let's just submit this, and this passes. Okay, so yeah, you just need to do it case by case and be careful with the nested values that are also that needs to be also stringified, and so you want to cursively call JSON stringify, but this works fine. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for this problem today. Please like and subscribe, and see you on the next one. Bye.